Well, you're a new face. I haven't seen you before.
No, I was on the forum with Tyler
Oh, yes, yes.
and got stuck.
Oh, okay. So Tyler didn't unstick you?
No, he pointed me in your direction.
Oh, good on him. Yeah. Well, we'll unstick you if we can. Yeah,
Thank you.
good stuff. Hi, Lennart. You mucked up the time zone thing. It's we just went out of daylight saving, so it's changed another hour. I can't hear you. You're not muted, but something's not working.
That reminds me, I've tried to come to these meetings like 3 times now, and I've messed up either the time or the day.
Right. Are you on my list notification list?
I don't think so because I don't know what that means.
Okay, send me your email, pop it into the chat there, and I'll put you on the
Okay.
list. What I've done recently because of this, I've on the website I've put timers, countdown timers to when the next meeting is. So
Friday.
it's irrelevant of time zones. It's always exactly how many hours until the
Yeah.
the next meeting. So that's the way around it. Oh, look, these time zones are a pain in the ass. Always
So
muck them up. Yeah, for sure. Let me see if I can hear you, Leonard. Talk to me. No, still can't hear you. Look, he's going to try again.
that usually works, doesn't it? Reset.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The whole technology thing with Zoom is pretty crazy too. I'll just grab your email and do that while we wait. So whereabouts are you? You're by your accent. You're in Britain somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Manchester.
yeah. So it's pretty late there.
No, 7 a.m.
Oh, okay, early there. Yeah, yeah. This time kind of gets early for Europe and late for America, so it's always a bit of a tricky time zone. It's perfect for Asia and Australia, but not many people come from there.
What time is it there?
It's 4 p.m. Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a nice time.
Hello, hello.
Oh, I got you now. Thanks, Leonard. Yeah, something happened. Yeah,
Yeah, it was some something about the settings.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, Jade, tell me where you're stuck, or what happened.
I don't know where I'm stuck exactly. But something seems to be getting in the way. I just seem to I think it's expectation. I think I'm expecting more or and I just seem to be getting stuck in quite big stories. And I think I'm possibly still struggling to let go of the idea of a perfect life. And I think I'm still, I think I need to grieve that.
That can certainly
Um,
happen. Grieving certainly is something that takes place. Yeah, sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I keep so like my biggest problem that I keep facing is like this idea of not knowing what to do and like really feeling like because there's this idea, isn't there, that I keep coming across when I read about other people's experiences of spontaneity and
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, lightness
Yeah.
and I don't know, I keep getting stuck in this like what do I do? Which can be small things like just literally what do I do when I wake up? And how do I navigate the day and getting overwhelmed by the idea of even having a choice of something different to do. But then it can get really big, as in like, oh, what am I doing with my life? I'm wasting my life. There's this perfect, spontaneous life where I'm not obstacled. I know that's not.
Yeah, yep, yep. Yeah, we
Yeah.
make up words here. That's fine.
Like there's this idea of this life I could be living that I'm not, and then that gets I get all tangled up with that. I get really quite stressed out,
Mm.
frustrated. Um, that's kind of where I'm at, I think.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, a few things popped up for me there as you were talking. Yeah. So what if we reframed this idea of a perfect life from everything happening exactly the way you would like it to happen to you being happy with however it turns up?
Mm.
Is that something you can grok? Can you get a bodily feeling of okayness about that?
I think so. I have in the past, and it's like really hard to remember for some reason.
Okay,
For some,
so the next thing that popped up for me, and you just tweaked it again then, right? It's really hard to remember is this idea that you can actually do things, that you have control.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's a really pervasive
yeah,
conditioning that goes on from birth onwards. You know, you're told how you have to be and you're told what you have to do to achieve it. And then you spend the rest of your life failing to do that, which we all
yeah,
do, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So it appears that you haven't yet experienced at a visceral level that things just happen. You still
Mm.
got this idea that you believe that you can control things.
Yeah. Well,
And so,
I had an experience a good few years ago now, probably about 5 years ago, where that happened, and it was just like, oh, I could just my experience of thinking was just thinking, and my body was just moving, and it was really freeing. But then I I don't know whether this is another story, but it's like I wanted that again, and then um. I feel like this is something that can happen now as well, is where I get stuck in this story of or belief that I'm trying to avoid my real life and my responsibilities. It's almost like it feels like my mind's trying to screw me over, really.
you're allowed to say
Um,
fuck here.
how did you know that?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, of course it
yeah,
is, you know. This is the nature of mind. Now, it's not trying to screw you over in that sense that it does screw you over, but it's not trying to. What it's trying to do is keep you away from unpleasant feelings.
yeah,
And, and so it's forever spinning stories that are very seductive, really great suck-ins to keep you feeling as good as it can attempt to have you feel. It really tries very hard to make you feel good all the time. But it's misguided. You know, we've trained it in such a way that, it lives in fantasy land all the time. And the consequence of that is that we end up doing a lot of suffering and it's unnecessary. So it's not, it is, that feeling that you've got that your mind is trying to take control, if you like, right? Let's not give it intentions, is true. That's the way the mind works. So you can't stop your mind. I mean, that's not something you've got control over either. It's like you can't stop your eyes from seeing if you keep them open, that's what happens. You know, you can't stop your mind from producing thoughts. That's what happens. But you can, and this goes a bit against what I was saying, it can happen that you can train yourself to not engage with certain thoughts. Now, at this end of the game, at this, let's call it a beginning end, even though it's not a raw beginning, it's reasonable to say that all your thoughts are bullshit. Every one of your thoughts is not it's not adaptable. It's not going to help you do what we want it to do. Later on, we'll take notice of certain thoughts and we'll recognize those thoughts that are rubbish and we'll recognize those thoughts that are useful. But at the moment, if you just treat all of your thoughts as rubbish, then that gives you, well, let's put it this way. We're planting the seed now with this conversation that it's possible for you to not get sucked into thoughts, to the content of thoughts, right? The thought will happen and you'll go, leave me alone. I'm busy. I'm busy interacting with what is actual and I have no time for you at the moment, Mr. Thought. Go away. Or another way to put it that I frequently use as a really good way to look at it is if you've got a friend that's a really, really close friend, but that friend happens to, let's say, be a conspiracy theorist or whatever. They've got soapboxes that they jump up and crap on about all the time. But they're such a good friend that you can say, shut up, don't give me that rubbish. And they'll do it without taking offense. They'll just know it's you and the relationship can cope with the fact that you can tell them to shut up and they just change the subject. They don't mind. No offense taken. That's the relationship you need with your thoughts.
Okay.
Just shut up, leave me alone, I'm busy. And they'll do it. In the beginning, they might be a little bit more insistent and they might keep coming back saying, come on, follow me down this rabbit hole. It'll be good. You know, I'll give you satisfaction if you follow me down this rabbit hole. But you know, they're lying. You know, they've got good intention, but they never deliver. They never give you satisfaction. I use, so some stories here. One of them is that we've got a brain and the way it works in the brain is that those things that we do frequently, whether it be thinking or behaving, we're a groove, if you like. The neural pathways, the synaptic connections that make up a neural pathway, the more it's used, the quicker it works and the more accessible it is. Right? So what we've got is we've got a well-worn path in our, this is a tricky one, in our relationship to our thoughts. Right. So that's what I was talking about before with having that kind of friend you can tell it to shut up. That's the relationship thing. So the relationship with your thoughts is a very, very well-worn groove. And it's, well, anyway, it's just imagine it in the brain like that. What we want to do is we want to allow that to atrophy a bit by not using it, and we want to develop new pathways. And so what we do is when we recognize that we were lost in thoughts, in a thought story, in a fantasy of some kind, right? We will recognize it.
Mm.
And when we recognize it, you laugh. You laugh out loud. If you're by yourself and you can do that, laugh out loud. If you're in company and you can't, just laugh internally. But make a point of laughing. Fake it, that's fine. You know? Do what you just did, that's great. Right? That's a good enough laugh. And if you fake it like that when you're by yourself, that's even better. Because when you do that, when I just did that then, my whole body changes. I got the hairs on my arms stand up and things. What happens is you give yourself a hit of feel-good hormones, and you'll drive out any stress hormones that are there. They just get flooded by good stuff, and the old stuff goes away. But make a point of recognizing that it's the moment of recognition that you're celebrating. Right? Now, that moment of recognition will lift you out of the content of the thought. You'll stop being seduced by whatever that thought was about, because that recognition is enough to break it. Seeing is enough to break it. This is a big one. It's a really, really powerful moment when you see something. That's when beliefs change. Right? So recognizing that you were lost in thought, celebrating that moment, you'll really quickly, within a matter of weeks, you'll find that you'll even reach a recognition that you were about to get lost in thoughts before it happens. Right? And what will happen, of course, is that as you get lost in thoughts, when you do get lost in thoughts, you'll realize it quicker. Right? So it's not like we're doing a remembering, but when remembering happens and you do this exercise, you laugh with recognition. Right? Underline the word recognition, put it in capital letters and bold it. Right? When you laugh with recognition, right, it not only it interrupts the old pathway, which has a pull to finish it. Have you ever come across people that start to tell you something and you say to them, "Oh, you've already told me that," but they've still got to keep telling you. They can't not finish it. They've got to do it. That's the nature of these thoughts as well. It'll want to finish. Well, when you recognize it and it breaks the spell, that you also frustrate the satisfaction component of that process, and that helps that pathway to atrophy even faster. Right? And then what happens is you move over to the right brain. So instead of being left brain critical, analysing, etc., you move over to the right brain where you go, "Oh, okay." You're taking notes.
Yeah.
I'll give you a copy of this. You'll get a copy of this video as well.
Okay, cool.
Mm. So you get the gist of what I'm saying about thoughts.
Yeah.
It's a practical way of breaking the spell of
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah.
I think I've been noticing thoughts for quite a long time. I think that's what's frustrating. Years and years ago, I'd have periods where being could happen for like, I don't know, like a week or something. I
Yeah.
felt like I was in this state of being. And now it's just, I don't know, it's almost like time doesn't exist in a sense of lack of progress. I think that's why, get that frustration in the story of going back to square one kind
Yeah.
of idea where
Let me
thoughts
tell you
can
about that one too. See, you say things that trigger me, so I'll jump up on my soapbox
Yeah.
here. You can't go backwards. It's a fact. Every experience you have, and this is logical, you tell me if it resonates
Yeah.
with you. Every experience you have changes you. And so what happens is when you have that period of clarity, let's call it that for want of a better description, and then it seems to not be there anymore. Well, it's right, it's not there. But what's happened is you haven't gone back to where you were before you had it. What's happened is that you've lifted the lid off some of the stuff that was suppressed and more stuff comes up. And that's why it seems like you haven't got it anymore. It's covered up by. So it's like, it's a story, but it's always there underneath. And we just have to uncover it. That's what we're doing with a lot of this stuff. That's just a concept, a story of about how we could look at it.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind is you remember that they were beautiful moments, beautiful times that you had when you were like that, in that state, right? That again, the mind jumps in and says, oh, I want that back again.
Yeah.
It was great. I want it again. Well, the problem there is that the moment you start chasing something, you chase it away. You don't ever get it by chasing it. Right. So
Yeah.
imagine it like a dog, My daughter's got a German Shepherd dog and if it doesn't want to get caught, no matter what you do, you'll never catch it. It'll just jump away from you all the time. It knows how to do that. But if you stop chasing it and sit down, it'll come up and lick your face. Right? Well, that's what you've got to do with these things. Now, you're not going to ever get the same one back, but you'll get a new version of it. But a new version will only come by invitation. It'll never come by you chasing it. That's sad news, isn't it? Well, in one way, it's sad news. But chasing it rests on the delusion that you can do something.
Yeah.
And that you can do something rests on another delusion that there is somebody there that has control. And that rests on a delusion that there's somebody there. Now, this is a big one. Things happen because of conditions. This is a story, but it's a good story, right? Conditions make something possible. Circumstances make something possible, right? And let's say you nodded in recognition that you can see what I was saying, right? Now, for you to be able to have nodded your head means that a whole lot of conditions had to be present. So if we start at this end, you're here and you heard something that you agreed with, right? They're the obvious conditions. But the fact that you're here relied on the fact that your mother and father copulated at some point. And the fact that they're here was relied on the fact that some cavemen somewhere or other did the same thing. And the fact that they were there relied on the fact that they had food to eat and they were healthy enough to reproduce. And the fact that the food was there relied on the fact that the atmosphere was good enough for it to, etc. We can go back to the beginning of time or the beginning of existence, if there is such a thing, and every single thing that's ever happened was necessary for you to be able to nod your head now. If any of those things were different, this would be different. It had to be exactly the way it was for this to be exactly the way it is. That's reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So cause and effect is a simplistic notion. We've been taught that one or two things can cause something else to happen, but that just simply ignores the infinite number of other things that those two things rested on. They couldn't
Yeah.
happen without it, you know. So if you accept that whatever you take credit for doing relied on an infinite number of circumstances and conditions to happen, all of a sudden that you go, well, I can't take credit for doing that. It just happened. Does that make sense?
Does, yeah.
Now, we've got it intellectually and maybe a little bit more. Maybe you felt that in your chest for a little bit as well. But regardless, what we need to do is translate that into experience. We need to recognize, right, that the fact that you could just sit back up then, you didn't even know you were doing it. So how could you say you were controlling? It just happened that you sat back. Right? And that relied on conditions of having strong back muscles. It relied on the fact that you were sitting down. It relied on the fact that you're everything, whatever you can imagine is all involved in that. Right? So there's a confirmation of the theory that we just talked about, that it was conditions that enabled that to happen. It was
Mm.
conditions, not control, not will, not decisions, not choice. They're all stuff that the mind brings to the table after the fact.
My mind did bring a thought up though, where it's like, um, but given certain conditions, you could still choose to do something different within those conditions, you know?
No, you can't.
Still trying to make me feel responsible, like really fully in control and
Yes, yes, that's the intention of the thoughts, yeah. Now,
mm,
the fact that you are wearing the clothes you're wearing happened for a whole lot of conditions, a whole lot of circumstances were involved in you picking those clothes out of the drawer or the cupboard or wherever they were and putting them on this morning or whenever you did, right? You can now look back and say, I could have chosen to put on a different jumper. And that's a good story, but you didn't. You did what you did, what you did, what it is, what it is, what it is, and that's the way it is. There is no room for alternatives except in your imagination. Now, if we say you have no free will, that doesn't mean that you live in a deterministic world, right? Every one of those conditions is dependent on every other condition, and they're all in flux all the time. They're all always moving. Nothing in this world is still. If you took a chunk of that wall and put it under an electron microscope, you've got atoms that are whirling around being very active. Nothing is still. Nothing has no movement. Everything is always moving. And that's the nature of every single condition that leads to you apparently doing what you do.
mm,
Now, this is not to say that you have to go through the world in future thinking, I didn't do it, it just happened. It just means that you need to recognize that. If you recognize that yourself is a concept and that certain conditions will lead to a sense of self, and that's something that's quite reasonable. There's this sense of this body is moving, and I can shorten that to say I am moving. And that's a reasonable thing. It's useful, right? But the moment you sit down and look at the thing in a scientific manner and investigate the details of it, you'll recognise that things just happen. Have you come across that psychology experiment or those psychology experiments? There's been several of them where they put a person in an MRI machine and then they said, when the light goes on, you choose whether you're going to press the red button or the green button, right? And the bloke that's looking at the MRI can tell which button they're going to choose before they know which button they're going to choose. All right.
mm.
I can send you the thing of the research, or you can Google it and you'll find it. No worries. It's out there, right? So how does that happen? Right? The brain takes into account all of the circumstances and chooses. And then the brain notifies the mind, I'm going to press the red button. or the green button, whichever one. Right? But there's a significant, distinct delay between when the brain has made up its mind what to do and the person is notified of what the brain's decision is. Right? Now, the reason that I mentioned that one is because, again, if you look at it in a mechanistic way, right, it's the body that does these things, and the body does it based on circumstances, on what conditions are present. Some of those might be story. There could be stories there. A lot of that will be experience, history, and some of that will be external circumstances. Or, and then more accurately, an interpretation of those external circumstances. So tell me now why you're not awake.
Don't know.
Good answer. Love it. Thank you. Perfect answer. When you read about this stuff or watch YouTube videos, what you get given a lot of the time is people's waking up experience. And so consequently, people can get the idea that what what we call a honeymoon period, those bits that you've experienced in the past of having that wonderful clarity, is always there. Well, it's not. That's bullshit. It's not always there. It can come and go. It is always there in a way, but we're not always aware of it. So you don't go through life going, oh, isn't this wonderful? Oh, I feel so good. Oh, isn't it great? Isn't it beautiful? You know, you'll have moments of that. It's there if you think about it, but it's not something that pervades life at a conscious level all the time, except in fairy stories. And we've been fed a lot of fairy stories about what enlightenment is, what waking up is. Most of us who we would say awake, and I certainly would say for myself, being awake is literally what the Buddhists describe as stream entry. It's the beginning of a path, and it goes on for as long as it goes on for, probably until the day I die, who knows. But essentially, there's no end result. There's no finished product. It's a process. Once started, just keeps on going. What I use as I'll ask people about what's been triggering them lately. That's a good indication of what's happening. And so for those who've been on the path for a while, getting triggered will happen way less frequently than it does in the beginning. In the beginning, we'll get triggered frequently by external circumstances, or rather by our interpretation of external circumstances. Right? A great one that Ram Dass said that I just love is, if you think you're so enlightened, go spend a weekend with your birth family. Right? They'll trigger you for sure. Because they're the ones that conditioned you. So, you know, it's like, yeah, wow. So what happens is when we wake up, we recognize that there's no self. We recognize that it's that delusion that there is a self running the show becomes an illusion. Right? That is, it still seems like there's somebody there running the show. But if we look at it, we know there's not. And so we're quite happy to live with the illusion of it because that's useful. It means that we can talk to the cashier at the supermarket. You know, we're pretending to be a self. if you like, and I want this, and here's my money, and etc. It's just a useful facade, if you like, one way to put it, that we have. But the moment you go, as is there anybody here? No, there's just responses to circumstances. So when we say there's no self, it's a recognition that there's an illusion that's there. A lot of people at LU will focus very heavily on look to see if you can find a self. If you
Yeah.
can't find a self, does that mean that there's no self there? Well, they'd like to leave it at that sometimes, but the reality is, if you're looking for your car keys and you can't find them, it doesn't mean that there's no car keys. It just simply means you can't find them, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So the same thing could be applied to a self. And so there's that looking for a self and not finding it. It's a beginning thing. It's just helps to start with. Straight after that, what I say is, look, from the moment you were born, well, before you were born, actually, you were starting to be conditioned, and you were conditioned into the idea that there is a self there running the show. Right? And you were given a name, and you were congratulated and celebrated when you recognised, or when you were able to say that name, and you learned all these characteristics about yourself from experience, and you took a whole lot of them in from your parents and friends, other people telling you. When you went to school, it was other kids probably reflecting their parents' views, but nevertheless, there was all this influence that went on all the time. And over the years, you collected thousands and thousands of little scenarios about Jade, who she is, what she likes, what she looks like, etc. All sorts of things. Everything that you could ever think of about. And it's, if you put it together in a book, it would be a really thick book. Right? Now that doesn't make up the self, but believing those things and responding to them creates a sense of self. And it's the mistake of believing that the sense of self proves that there is a self, that where we get caught. And when you recognize that, those stories are still going to exist, but we can not be compelled to obey them. And we can do all sorts of things. One of the things I discovered that was a life changer for me was actually very close to when I woke up. Just after I woke up, would have been about 3 weeks later, when my sister-in-law died, and I was asked to do the eulogy at her funeral. And my first reaction was, I couldn't do that. I can't do that. She was a really good friend, and I just knew I was going to break up if I had to do it. But this idea of me being a story, I thought to myself, well, I can just write a new chapter that says I can do it and put it in the book. And I kind of did that, and I did the eulogy, and I broke up, but it was fine. It went down really well. It was like, wow, this is amazing. I can be whoever I want to be. I just have to write a chapter and stick it in the book of Vince. It works. And it really does work. You can do anything.
I feel like I had that kind of realization and experience when I first encountered this stuff. Because I was doing my doctorate, and it was in postmodernism. Whilst I also did narrative therapy. I don't know if you know about that because it's Australian training, but it kind of all I was reading a book, Joan Tollefson. I don't know whether you've
I know,
read
Joan,
any.
yeah, yeah.
It all kind of happened at the same. It was just a weird week where I just remember every single person I spoke to. I was like, I feel like a puddle on the floor. Like I just don't know who I am, what I am. And I had this realization, like, as I was trying to make sense of it all, because I was like, how do I even know? How do I know what to do? Because well, values aren't even real. You know, these things called values that all these things I thought were real are not real. And then I had this realization that I could create my own. I could choose. And that was really wonderful for a time. And then, but that was many years ago. And I don't know whether I just feel like I kind of went away from it because I've not got any friends involved in any of this stuff. It's been a very alone journey. Like you're this second human being I've actually spoken to. The only other person was someone of my doctorate, a tutor who used to be a Buddhist monk, who he was the person who pointed me in these directions.
Mm.
He introduced me to meditation. Um, so I don't know over like years, I've kind of just become I don't know, but like I feel like I've lost that
Yeah,
energy
I get
and
that. I get that. Yeah,
passion.
for sure. That's the the reason I started these groups a couple of years ago was for exactly that thing. All of the people that woke up at Liberation Unleashed, and I've been guiding people there since 2011. So, 14 years later, lots and lots of people. And I thought, what happens when they go away? When afterwards, do they just go back to sleep? They've got no one to talk to. They can't talk to it with their family about it. Their friends think they're weird if they talk about it. So, right. And so I started these groups, and I tell you, I'm so glad you're here. Just keep coming. You've got people to talk to about this stuff, and that's a really, really big thing. It keeps it alive. What I used to do and what I still do is suggest that if I feel that whoever I'm guiding is lucid, once they wake up, I suggest that they become a guide, because that's a way of keeping it alive. And
Yeah,
so what happens, of course, is that old conditioning gets reinforced, and this new conditioning gets nothing. So of course you go back to sleep. You know, you lose
yeah,
it. Yeah, but it has changed you when it happened, and so it's much easier to reawaken than it is to wake up from square one.
yeah, yeah,
So uh, I'm trying to tell you too, you're much closer than you think,
yeah.
right? It's amazing how many people I talk to who I have this idea that, wow, they're already awake, and they'll go, no, I'm not. And it's just like, well, the only difference between you being awake and not being awake is knowing that you're awake. Okay, you get the idea that that if you have a belief about yourself that you're not awake, that shapes your perspective of the world. And that if you have the story that you are awake, you've got a different perspective. And the perspective that you view the world from changes your experience. And the big thing with when you are awake, you're going to have a lot of awesome experiences because you're awake and you're open to those experiences. Where if you go, oh, I'm not awake, you shut yourself off from those experiences. Now, the thing is, with those experiences, that awe that happens is pretty much a direct experience. That is, it's an experience that happens with no attached thoughts to it, or at least those thoughts don't come until later. The consequence is nothing gets filed away in memory when it happens. So you'll know that it happened, but unless you sink into it, you won't be re-experiencing it. So consequently, we people will have a lot of mini awesome experiences that they don't even remember. They don't put
Mm.
it together into something that adds up to, oh, I must be awake to have those experiences. You with me? Now, it's a tricky one because from a perspective of a non-awake person, anybody that says they're awake is bullshitting, right? So we kind of go, that's arrogance. You can't say I'm awake, right? And then get this one, this is a really tricky one. From the perspective of being awake, it is bullshit. There's no such thing as being awake. Yeah, so it's kind of it's a funny little recursive thing goes on there. You know, it's a thing for seekers, but it's not a thing for somebody who's awake. Yet it is something for those who are awake because it's that different perspective, and so on. You know, there's no end to that little circular thing that goes around. Yeah. So being awake or not awake is neither here nor there. That's not the thing. They're just descriptions. They're just stories that we put on something to point to various things. What we're really on about is whether you live in a deluded world or an illusory world. And the reality is, it's if you're awake, I feel apologetic about saying that word, you're living in an illusory world. If you're not awake, you're living in a delusory world, full of delusion. Yeah. So another way to kind of step back and look at it is to say the difference between awake and not awake is that the awake person recognizes what is a concept and what is actual, whereas the not awake person imagines a whole lot of concepts are actual. And how do you know something is a concept? There's a really easy test you put to it. If it's a story about something, it's a concept. Or from the other perspective, the only thing that is actual is your current experiencing. Nothing else is actual. Everything else is conceptual. Now, when we get down to the next level, so to speak, we recognize that my current experiencing is an interpretation that I put on that is shaped by my perspective. Let that one
Yeah.
sink in, yeah? So being awake or not awake is totally irrelevant here. We're just looking at finding those bits of residual belief where we imagine that a concept is actual. And then as we look at them, it takes no more than simply looking at them to realize that, that's just a story. And that changes everything.
And is that just through thought, noticing thought? Enlighten.
I would much rather say, I mean, that's probably true, but let's come from the other end and let's say it's noticing experience and eliminating the noticing of thought, or rather eliminating the value that we used to put on thought. So how you get out of your head is to go into the body. So I'm loading you up with a lot of stuff here. A feeling is a sensation with stories hanging off it. And the way you discover what those stories are is by concentrating on the sensation component of the feeling. And as you concentrate, look at, investigate, become more intimate with the sensation, the stories will reveal themselves as they drop off. And what you're left with in the end is a sensation that will most likely simply dissolve at that point. But on the way to that dissolving, the stories will reveal themselves as they drop off, and you'll recognize them as stories.
Mm.
Right? So a sensation. Now here's a good one. Here's a great example. You're standing at the bottom of a thrill ride at the show, and you're feeling this incredibly intense feeling in your stomach, and you go, I'm scared? No, I'm excited. What is it? Which one am I feeling? Right? It could be fear. It could be
And
excitement. Go?
it depends on the story.
Exactly. Exactly. Same sensation, different stories. So the fear experience has the same sensation attached to it as the excitement. It's just they've a different story. Yeah. So tell me again where you're stuck.
Um, I don't know, maybe there's a belief or expectation, I don't know what the difference is right now, that things will happen if
What was that laugh about?
I don't know.
So just replay it in memory. You said things will happen, ha ha ha.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, a realization that it's all
Yep. Okay.
happening.
Good.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a good one. Leonard's heard all this stuff before, so a lot of it's just repeat for him. But okay. So a comedian stands up on stage and he's got to make jokes for people. He's got to get the audience to laugh. Right? And so the basis of humour is surprise. And so what he does is he starts to weave this story where he takes people down this road in this particular direction, and then at a certain point, usually after the right amount of pause, etc., he switches at 90 degrees and goes off to the side with another story. And it's that surprise that causes laughter, right? And when you laughed, it was because you surprised yourself. Something surprised you, right? And it was when you said something, a realization happened. And that realization, guess what? It changed a belief. And that's why you laughed. You laughed because you saw something when you said it. Now, whether it was because, I mean, I don't know the details of it, but you said something will happen. Now, whether you then suddenly realized the words that you said were minus the idea of you doing something, or whether you realized that happenings just happen, or whether you, who knows what it was you realized, but something happened for you to laugh like that. So, so why I'm telling you this, the point of telling you all this is that when you catch yourself spontaneously laughing or giggling or whatever like that, look back and make a appreciate the value of the change that occurred in you with that, because that's going to happen to you a bit as we go along. You know, in the near future, you'll surprise yourself with how this stuff is. Some of it is sunk in. I put it as we're throwing seeds at you, and some of them will germinate and some won't. And every time one germinates, you'll smile, you'll laugh, because you'll be surprising yourself at what's actually taken root, so to speak. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So when you first started telling me what was going on, you were saying things like, "I don't know what to do."
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about that now?
There's still this like tension comes up in me, especially around the neck, and there's this felt sense of what do you do? You know,
Yeah,
like
I
I'm
get it. And you laughed again because you can see the ridiculousness of what you just said, but still there is, although
bit
there is
felt.
the, yeah, there's a felt thing, yeah. And the fact that you felt that contraction, the fact that you were open to recognize what happened in your body is brilliant. That's a perfect thing that happened, right? Because that took you out of your head. All of a sudden, you're realizing things at a different level when things like that happen. Yeah. But that belief about doing still has some hooks there for you. That's all. Now,
Yeah.
here's a beautiful koan for you. If do you meditate these days?
I
Yeah, no,
kind of sometimes I
yeah,
don't have a a strict or routined anything. And I used to run away from it because I thought it was reinforcing a sense of self. Um, and now I don't know, meditation happens and doesn't happen.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, good. I like that. I like that. Yeah. And if you get any of those ideas, write them down and bring them to the meeting, and we'll rip them apart for you. No worries at all. Okay, but here's a great koan for you. Now, if it happens that you find yourself meditating, bring this to the front of your mind. Uh, and I say and it sounds like a doing, but
yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of it will happen or not, that's all, right? How do you do not doing?
And I'm not, am I supposed to have an answer? I know.
Will you think about it and tell me if you've come up with an answer?
It reminds me of a moment I had where I had this realization of, sorry, my alarm, um, how meditation was this thing I was doing. And then I realized that it was a not doing, and that it was like this just this completely letting go of everything and just being there. I just remember, I still remember that I was sat here and it
Yep,
was a
yep,
couple of
yep.
years.
So you
It reminds me of
spontaneously
that.
had that koan going for you. Yeah,
And that's what frustrates me when I see you know, how meditation's talked about, because it's this meditate. I mean, meditation itself is a concept, isn't it? Like this conceptual layer
absolutely. Yeah.
over the top of.
There's a million variations of things that happen, things that people do. And there's a million variations of that, whether you go from watching your breath to watching your thoughts to doing nothing or trying to do nothing. Trying to do nothing, that's a weird one, isn't it? How can you put effort into not doing? Anyway, yeah. So, of course, what we're faced with now is the 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 oxymoron that language is. Language creates the old conditioned belief in how things happen
Yeah.
and all of that. So this stuff that we're talking about hasn't yet reached um, a tipping point where new words get invented and put into the language. Every year, the Oxford Dictionary or whoever will add words that are in common usage, and most of those these days come from social media. But regardless, those words get added to the dictionary every year. But words that we might use, well, they don't exist. We have to invent them. And when we do, not enough people are using them for them to get added to the dictionary. So they never become part of the language. But that's okay. It's not a big issue. See, no. Here's another story. Boy, I'm throwing stuff at you today. But this story is that the world that exists as society, culture, is very much determined by people's beliefs, and people's beliefs are determined by their conditioning, and a big part of everybody's conditioning is language. Right? Language insists on there being a subject and an object, when in fact they can only exist as a concept. The only thing that actually exists is a verb, which is in
Yeah.
between the subject and the object, and that verb is your experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every time I write experiencing, Grammarly comes up and tells me it's wrong. I've got to change it to the experience. But the experience is not experiencing.
I'll capture it and make it into a noun.
Yes, it turns it into a noun. Absolutely, yeah. Right. Now, that one part of the issue, of course, is that the world is full of abstract nouns. And I don't even remember being taught at school about the difference between an abstract noun and a concrete noun. But society takes a lot of abstract nouns to be concrete nouns, and they're not. Yeah. So language is a huge conditioner of us.
Yeah.
Now, what I say to you is that there really is two parallel worlds. I don't know about being parallel, but that'll do for a concept at the moment. And one of them is the world of society and the world that we come from, the world that we know that we were conditioned in. And the other one is the world that exists when we wake up. And that world doesn't have language. It's beyond words. It's a world that lives underneath labels. Right? So if I say to you, that colour's white, you get a certain image of what white is. But if you look at anything white, you're going to find that the light on it means that it'll go from grey to something luminous. And it's a whole range of colours. It's not just white at all.
Yeah.
Below the label is the actuality. And what happens is the way the brain works is that when people say a label, the brain generates an image, and that's what they relate to. And they think they're relating to something actual, but they're not. They're relating to the image that the brain created. And what we're learning to do is relate to what is actual. And that's where the awe is. Oh, look at that. Wow. It's not just white, it's 1,000 colours.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's another concept called integration that happens. So all this stuff I've thrown at you, um, mixed up with your own experience, mixed up with your own ideas, etc., all will become something. Who knows what? It'll sink in. Some of it will sprout, some of it won't. Whatever. And we just keep at it until enough of it sprouted for you to be able to do this on your own, kind of thing. And you will. You will. You already are. Yeah. So yeah. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. It's
No
wonderful.
worries. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, I come to these groups and this is a little one today. There's only the three of us here because it's of that stupid time zone thing. But some of the other groups will have a few more people, and it's just a buzzy, beautiful, loving, accepting, spontaneous, authentic place that's just lovely. So I want you to experience that as well. Yeah.
So I've sent you my email. Will you
Yes.
um
I'll send you
send?
a reply with all of the meetings on it and a few other links as well. Yeah, when they are, and yeah,
That'd be great, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Welcome, welcome home.
Thank you.
Mm. How's life been for you, Lynette? Haven't seen you for a little while.
Yeah, quite fine, but I also guess I'm like falling asleep and reawakening, so to say. Um,
Okay, yes.
um, but before you said something that seemed very useful to me in the at that moment, um, because it had to do with the relationship with the thoughts, as if it was an old friend to whom you can say, ah, come on, shut up, it's bullshit. But he won't, it's nothing offensive. But I guess, yeah, I'm not so much getting lost in stories these days, but there is still a reaction to the observing of the thoughts, because sometimes my reaction is really like, oh my God, or like being annoyed, or then there is another thought that addresses a you, like, oh, why do you always think this boring shit or something? And I guess, yeah, maybe it could be useful really to have kind of a mantra or something like the laughing thing. I don't know, it doesn't really work for me. I don't know why, but maybe because I'm more cerebral, so I need something like a sentence, or I don't know. Mm, but usually what works in different beginnings of stories, for example, when there are thoughts about other people and what they do or think or how they are, then it I got quite used to thinking you don't know anything. I don't know anything, or there it can't be known.
Mm,
And this is really obvious to me, but there, yeah, I guess this way of being annoyed by thoughts actually still causes a bit of an entanglement into thoughts. So it's not yet this rather relaxed saying, ah,
yep,
come on.
yep. I get that. Yeah, yeah. So you said that it's fairly obvious to you when your thoughts are about other people, that you can
Mm.
say, you can recognize that you can't really know what's going on for them. You only have your imagination about that. Yeah. Does that mean that you feel like you do know what's going on for yourself?
Um, no, that's a different story, because recently I had moments where I felt really lonely, but then I investigated a bit more into this label lonely. What does that mean? And um, I already understood that the idea of being with someone wouldn't resolve that feeling. So it wouldn't change anything. Or I don't know, but not necessarily. And then it's also like in one day, I can see that there is so many different states of like how I feel.
Hmm.
And um, then sometimes there is the label, now I feel lonely, and then there's kind of this label seems like super worn out.
Mm.
It doesn't tell me a lot because it's like I
Yeah,
thought so many times that I'm already, I don't know. It's like, yeah, okay, that label,
yeah.
So
Seems insufficient.
yeah, but and then something happened to me because like some days ago, I don't know how to call it. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe yeah, it's just this bodily state rather, like something uncomfortable. But then I just put on a YouTube video with a very cheesy karaoke version of a song, and then I really exaggerated it, and then I started to burst out laughing, and then it made me see that like from one moment to the other it can change,
Can change, yeah, yeah.
but it will extend when there is the label and the story. And um, then another thing is that, yeah, I mean, I was not in Germany for 5 years, and there were a lot of changes happening. Um, and now my old friends, when I have contact with them, they try to speak to this old Leonard that they thought I was before. And it's not so much time ago that then my reaction would be that I would feel irritated because I would feel, no, I'm not like that anymore. But that is still an identification. It's like, no, I'm not like that.
Yeah, yeah. This I'm a new identity. Yeah. Mm.
It's kind of slowly changed into, mm, yeah, somebody telling me who I am. And then I think by myself, Uh, it's probably not like that, but I don't know either what this
Yes.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand it either.
Okay.
And it's much like this reaction of irritation. It's like, okay, let her have the story about me, and I actually don't know. Maybe she's right, maybe not, but
Have you have you had the recognition that what you clearly see that you don't know about anybody else?
mm,
Have you had the recognition that they also cannot know about you?
mm,
Yeah. So if they're telling a story
mhm.
that they think is relating to you, where does your reaction come from?
Mhm.
What is it? What are you reacting to? You know that they're not seeing you the way you are, that that's
Mm,
just the story they've got in their own head, yet you get
mm.
somewhat annoyed.
Yeah, yeah. The
Right. So
reaction,
it's not about their story of you that you're getting annoyed. What is it about?
it's about wanting to be seen by the other in the way I want to be seen.
Right. But they can't unless you
Yeah,
carry a big sign that tells them how to do it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that still happens, but sometimes it's also like, well, maybe you're right, I don't know either. Or let's say a person just um has like one part of the puzzle
Yes.
and present it to be that's you, for example.
Hmm.
And how I say yes or no, because it could be true and it's not true as well.
But what's it to you, whether it is or isn't? What does it matter?
Mm.
So this rests on a couple of obvious
Mm-hmm.
delusions here, and
Mm.
and one of them is that they must be able to see you the way you are for them to recognize the new you. They
Mm.
never will be able to do that, will they? Because they're
Yeah.
looking through their own experience, and their own experiences, they've never, probably none of them, have had the experience that you've had. So how can they
Mm-hmm.
possibly understand you? Not possible, not even close to possible. But yet
Yeah,
you
I
expect them to.
and it happens to me that yeah, mm, I can see through this wanting always something to happen or to achieve something or some to have some pleasant experience. Like the mind is used to that, like
Yes,
to
yeah.
out for that, and then I see through that, and then there is still maybe a bit like this, and then what?
Okay,
But
so
there's,
so what if we say it's obviously not about this at all,
mm,
right? That's why that this becomes illogical the moment we start looking at it. Right?
uh,
It's really about something else. It's really about some part of you wants something, feels the need for something.
yeah, what I wanted to say was that it's something that doesn't feel familiar. Like, for example, Um, yeah, and I guess there is like a little self that wants to be reflected by someone else in order to know that it's there, you know? So,
Okay, would approval cover it,
mm,
or just recognition? Some part of you wants recognition,
yeah,
wants to be
maybe.
seen, wants to be seen that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it really is, if we look at it from the other direction, it really is feeling not seen,
Hmm.
that this is really what this is about, feeling not seen. And then we try all sorts of things in order to fix that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Is it fixable?
No. Because I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, I've
Okay.
had that
So it's
all
not,
my
it's, you're right in that it's not fixable in the way that the ideal to be seen would fix it.
life.
It can't be fixed that way. What if it could be fixed by it no longer being desired,
Hmm.
right? So rather than say let's be seen and that will fix it, which
Hmm.
in fact it won't, because you'll never be seen enough. When you're being
Yeah.
seen, you'll still want it again and again and again, because there is
Yeah.
this thing of I feel unseen, I feel
Hmm.
not seen. And to fix it really is for that to become a non-issue. Not
Hmm.
being seen isn't going to fix it. Having it as a non-issue is the only fix there for it. And so how do we move from it being an issue to being a non-issue? How do we get
Hmm.
from there to there? This part of you that wants to be seen, I'll bet you that's the young Lennart in you. That's an immature, young, unevolved, innocent kid that wants to be seen. Not the adult Leonard. He knows all about that, but the
Hmm.
young kid, he doesn't. Hey, I'll bet you he's there feeling that. What do you reckon? What's your thoughts? What's your intuition tell you about that?
Mm, yeah, my intuition is a bit, yeah, when I was a child, it was rather ambivalent, like this thing of wanting to be seen, because on the other hand, I was I was frightened by the idea of being seen, because, yeah, when I was maybe 13, I already felt kind of that I was not heterosexual. So I had to kind of, yeah, or
Yeah,
there
yep.
was
So there was
something
a
that
reason to be not be seen.
myself,
Yeah.
I'm not show myself. And I think that's maybe the ambivalence of it, because it's
Yes,
like
yes. So that
not at
ambivalence is a big thing, isn't it?
the same
So you could
time.
say the way before that, way before sexuality become an issue, maybe you were feeling unseen, right? But once sexuality did enter the scene, then there was advantages to not being seen, especially back in the day when homophobia was a lot bigger than what it probably, well, what we hope it is now anyway.
Hmm.
Yeah, so go back to before that became an issue. That it's that younger one that wanted to be
Hmm.
seen.
Yeah, the thing is that, for example, my father was always absent and I
Hmm.
didn't feel seen by him, but my mom was like overly present, and it was always like, I think this is also a bit of my conditioning, because
Yep, yep.
uh, I'm very used to feel appreciated or loved when someone talks to me, looks me into the eyes over many hours, like, because that was basically what I
What your
was,
mum did. Yeah,
my mom. And then I think in a way it was, my mom always asked, um, how do you feel? What do you think? But that also maybe um, strengthened this
yep, yep.
creating stories and being
So,
like super
so
cerebral. And
some mums who are overbearing like that would be not relating to how you really felt. Not you. You know, you could still imagine some mums wouldn't be wouldn't be giving the they the child wouldn't get from them that they were seen because mum has these ideas that she was pushing. But your mum was asking you questions, and so would it be accurate to say that your mum that you did feel seen by your mum?
I felt seen
Yes,
by
that's it.
my mom.
That's all. Yeah.
I
So
felt always tell her how I feel.
yes,
And
yes.
I didn't do that, I would feel that she's kind of disappointed. So
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
have to create something.
So there was a distinct connection between you and your mum, but your dad, he was absent.
Yeah.
Right. So
Or
I'm immediately going in that direction, that it was your dad that you wanted to be seen by and you weren't.
yeah, or he would even, I mean, that's just some fragments that I remember more than others, but for example, I was very creative when I was a child. I liked to dance and to sing, and when he came home, he was kind of tired, and then he used to tell me, "Ah, shut up, stop that," or
Yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So in other words,
uh,
he didn't want to know. Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah. So when you think about this, to my way of thinking, it becomes obvious really quickly that there is no possible way that you were going to feel seen by him. He lived in his
mm,
own world. He had his own ideas about things, and he wasn't into sharing. He certainly didn't
mm,
ask you questions about anything, and he didn't never appreciated your creativity, your dancing, or anything like that. He may have even
mm.
had an adverse reaction to that. Yeah. So not only were you not seen by him, but you were somewhat rejected.
Mm-hmm.
by him. Now, as an adult, it's easy to see that this is never going to be fixed.
Hmm.
Right? He's never going to. He can't. Is he still alive?
No, but yeah, actually, I was at his side in the last weeks of his life, and I would say that in the frame of what was possible for him and for me, I got very close to him,
Yep. Yep.
not in the way I would have liked to, but
Yep. Yep. But still, yeah. Yeah.
I
Was
still it took many years like this kind of inner conflict with my dad, but I
sure.
think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not
In
that.
those last few weeks, would you say that you forgave him for the way he was when you were really young? I don't mean did you do anything about that or say anything about that, but did in your heart did you feel forgiving of all of that?
Mm, actually, um, yeah, it's a bit difficult for me to remember because it was super traumatic also.
Mm,
But I remember that um, it felt rather like being there for a child that is very innocent
yes,
and
yeah, I get that. I remember that one too. Yeah,
somehow being born and dying. I mean, there is kind of a similarity somehow. I don't
sure.
know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with that. Yeah. No, I felt that about my dad too before, well, after he died more so than before, but yeah, yeah, he was just an innocent, absolutely an
Mm,
innocent. Yeah. Even though as a child he was a monster, but yeah,
mm.
he didn't know any better. Yeah.
But I also remember that like some minutes before he actually died, he would like push away my hand, and then I went out of the uh,
The room. Yeah.
room. And I think back then it felt like a rejection, which is like to now to me
Yep.
it seems super obvious just wanted to protect me because I'm his child, you know. He didn't want me to
Yes.
see
Yes. Yeah.
that dying, but then actually I came back after some minutes and
He was already dead.
no, no, but at the same moment he died in the arms of my mom. But I must say that at least in my memory, it felt like something very, yeah, it's stupid to say natural, but it felt like the right thing at that moment. There
Yep.
was
Sure.
no.
Yep. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah. 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 People frequently don't want anybody around when they die, so they'll send them away, um, and then die while they're away. Yeah. I've experienced that a couple of times. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, so young Leonard
Hmm.
needs to be have an upgrade, if you like. He needs an update on
Mhm.
the actual perspective that he was experiencing way back when, you know, like way earlier than like at 4, 5, 6 year old, 7 year old, even, you know, that's where he needs to be updated with an adult perspective on what he was seeing and experiencing.
Yeah, the word update means really what it feels like because many times it feels like there's still an old program running on my
Yes,
computer,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't really have to do anything anymore with what I'm experiencing
Mm,
now. So,
mm. That's right. It does interfere, but it's not
mm,
valid. Yeah, it needs that fix. Yeah, yeah. So have you come across that meditation that I made? That now you, then you meditation?
No.
Okay, I'll put a link in the chat for you. It's would seem to be appropriate to a way to do that update. Um,
Mhm.
so I'll do that now while I think about it. Let's see where I find it. God, I've got that many tabs open on my browser. Oh, here we go. Okay, I'll put it in the chat for you. So
Ah, mhm. Thank you.
a good time to do that. Any time is a good time to do it, but a really good time to do it is just before you go to sleep.
Mhm.
Right? And the important aspect of it is the connection that you make with young Lennart, right? And that getting that although you'll use words to to explain to him an adult perspective on what he saw, it is your tone of voice and the emotion, the feelings of love and connection that will transmit what you mean, right? And using your imagination, it's when young Lennart leans into you that you'll know that he's understood, and that's when you pick him up and carry him back into the present. So
Mhm.
all of that stuff will still be there exactly the way it was, but there'll be a new perspective on it.
Mhm.
And it'll be the adult perspective that shows him that he was interpreting stuff in an innocent way that wasn't really relevant to the actual situation.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, see how you go. Have a play with it and see what what it does for you. Yeah.
Yeah, curious to try it out.
Yeah. And do it more than once. It's certainly you could repeat that a few times for sure. Yeah, it's a great way to upgrade, to update. Yeah, those because we keep these things segmented in us. We because we don't they trigger unpleasant things, memories and sensations, etc. That we avoid them, and then we push them away, and then they become encapsulated into some kind of isolation prison, and so they never get updated when they're in that state. So this is a way of kind of breaking that shell apart and getting in there and fixing it up.
Yeah, the story about updating is very useful to me, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. It's a good one. It is. It's relevant. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah, I still feel that many times I am in need of stories. For example, this whole thing about yeah, that you talked about before, like the free will and stuff like that, because I guess that many people think, yeah, but I have access to information. I'm able to think critically and reflect on things, and so this gives you the feeling of having a free will, but actually, why do you have this ability? Because of the conditions as well,
mm.
because you education, because your parents taught you to talk about or think about things maybe.
Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, there's
And
an interesting one that says something along the lines of, um, I feel powerful when I have control.
mm,
But the reality, that's a tricky one because the reality is we feel out of control, we feel
mm,
uncontrolled, and that gives us an unpleasant sensation, and we avoid that, and we avoid that by stroking this delusion that I do have control of things. Yeah,
there's one other story. I mean, talking about power, I mean, there are like some dictators or politicians at the moment who could trigger this idea of other people being in power and feeling helpless or something. But there's like one story that I found really helpful. I mean, it's not very new, but it's if everything is okay, then maybe some people are more in the limelight and others more in the background. But in the end, even the protagonists didn't write the script.
that's right.
So,
Yeah, yeah. And there's an irony here too that those people who are so much the most into power are the people that have
mm,
got the lowest self-esteem.
mm,
Yeah, so if I say somebody that we know has probably got the 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 lowest possible self-esteem at the moment, you'd know who I was talking about. I saw a good Facebook one that had it was a great big sign up that said, if we say he's an idiot for the first time ever, everybody in the world will know who we're talking about.
mm. Yeah. And I don't know, sometimes, um, for example, when I observe my cats, then it seems kind of obvious to me that, I mean, that's a concept, of course, but like, mm, they fulfill their being a cat by just doing what cats do, you know? And maybe it's the same for human beings as well. I mean, it may seem that our like repertoire of things that we can do is bigger, but
Yeah, it's the
I
same end though. Yeah,
by doing what we are doing, we do what is according to our condition, and that's nothing that we can choose anyway. So,
absolutely. Yep, yep. So we needn't feel angry or bad about anybody doing anything. It is just they're just living out their conditioning. Mm. Just as your father did, just as
mm,
everybody does. It is what it is, what it is. It's just so freeing.
mm.
Mm. So what did you make of all of that stuff, Jade?
Interesting, intense. It's interesting to see that it's okay to go into, past and stories. 'Cause I know there's different ways of looking at it, isn't there? And some people are like, no, we have to stay here now relentlessly. Um, so it's interesting to acknowledge and validate that there's other things that can be explored and that there's value in that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anybody that says how it has to be is not not to be believed. Yeah. Here's me saying how it has to be. Don't believe me.
Mhm.
Yeah, everything's active, and although we talk about stories like there's something to be devalued, you know, they just are what they are. You know, it's recognizing their rightful place, if you like, that frees us from the compulsion to have to obey what their content is about. But they still exist. They're just stories, and they happen to all of us. You know. The time will come when I'll say to you, it's stories all the way down. Everything rests on stories, beliefs. But don't worry about that yet. That's a future thing. But just yeah. We need to. It's really the self-referential stories that are the problem, and they're not a problem, of course, but the ones that we need to, the ones that we get value out of investigating at this stage, all those self-referential ones. Because one way to put it is that those that are asleep have strong hooks into an identity, and those that are awake go, oh, I don't know what to identify with. I have no idea, you know. So I'll just identify as an awake person. And if you ask me what that is, I'll have to say I don't know. But identification, again, is the relationship to stories. So if they're there, but they haven't got strong hooks into us, if they're slippery, if you like, or you know, instead of being Velcro, they're Teflon. That's much that's well, that's a good story anyway, isn't it? So we can't help what's there. It's there. If it's there, it's there, and there is no any good or bad, any meaning of any kind, but in particular good and bad, is an overlay on what is there. It's not what is there. Nothing is there is good or bad, except that we make it so, to quote Mr. Shakespeare. Yet we will talk as if it's better not to be seduced by stories. So we say, you know, that's good, but we recognize it's just a way of looking at things. It's tricky. In the end, if we follow any of these down the rabbit hole, we get to the point where we get mute. We can't say anything. And and the mind abhors silence. It will almost always try and fill it with something. So it's always a good provocative test to just be quiet and watch what happens. Watch the mind go crazy trying to fill the space. So a thought comes to me, Jade, that might be valuable for you to go and reread your whole thread right from the very beginning, right? Reread what you wrote when you first registered at LU, and then reread what Tyler wrote, what you wrote, what Tyler wrote, what you wrote, and so on. And in light of whatever change might have happened for you today, see if something doesn't resonate differently with you. Everything will be already there in those writings. And you will bring a different perspective to it now than what you did a couple of hours ago, what you might have brought to it. So let's just see what happens. It's a good idea anyway.
And will the recording, the notes from this, be emailed to us? Or...
I will. I'll be posting this video on YouTube, so you can have access to it. But when I send you the note, I'll send you a link to the backup version of this video, which has got a transcript as well. So that may be valuable for you too. So yeah, but on the note that I send you, when I add your name to that list, will be where you can get to the YouTube videos and where the whole playlist is as well. So
Okay.
I generally will send that out once a week with 3 videos if I remember to do it. I frequently don't, but once a week I'll send you an email with the last week's 3 videos and all the other links as well. And on the list, the links with that, there's also a link to a chatbot that I put together. That's you have a play with that. You'll find that rather interesting to play with. Put in I am stuck if you still feel stuck, or anything at all. Put anything in. Put in, purple's not purple. That'll do. Doesn't matter what you put in. It'll take you right back to what's relevant for you. But it's worth playing with too. Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, let's call it a day, eh? I have an early mark where there's only a couple of us here. Yeah, but good stuff. And you come back, you email me anytime you want. No worries at all with all of that.
pardon?
So you email me anytime you like with
Oh,
anything.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. That's really good.
Tyler is a really good guide. So he's. But if you feel like he's missing the point with you or something, ask for a different guide. You can do that too. But
Okay.
yeah. He's pretty direct, Tyler. I like that about him. I tend to waffle a lot, and he just slaps you around the face straight off. He's a bit like my chatbot. It'll tend to slap you around pretty quickly too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good to meet you. Hope to see you at future meetings. Yeah.
Thanks again. Take care.
No worries.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Yeah. You
Or
too.
not.
Nice to meet you.